following is a presentation of Learfield IMG College. From the Georgia Southern Sports Network, powered by Learfield IMG College.
Wings up, Eagle Nation! Touchdown, Georgia Southern!
This is Inside Eagle Nation, your all-access look into Eagle athletics.
Taking a look through all the other action in Georgia Southern athletics this past week, a lot of road action, a lot of teams hitting the old I-16 out of town.
Getting on the steel horse and taking us to parts north, south, west, wherever. Can't really go too much farther east.
Now let's return to the Learfield IMG College studios. Here are your hosts, Colin Lacy and Danny Reed.
That's a fact, Jack.
Welcome into another edition of Inside Eagle Nation, episode number 148 of Inside Eagle Nation, your official podcast for Georgia Southern Athletics. Colin Lacy alongside the voice of the Eagles, Danny Reed, after a tough trip out to Fayetteville, Arkansas. I say tough trip. It was a fun trip. Just not necessarily the most fun of a game, but we will dive into that a little bit later on as we also prepare for Louisiana coming in to open up Sun Belt Conference play. Good to be able to get to see some of our friends. We thought we were going to get to catch up with Jay Walker today, but because of his pesky coaches show that they've got over at Pete's tonight, he won't be able to join us. But after this gets wrapped up, just before 7, you can head on over to RaginCajuns.com. Check them out on the Louisiana Athletics Live. They'll be live from Pete's and catch up with a couple of people around Louisiana Athletics as well as head coach Billy Napier a little bit later on tonight. But diving into this week in Georgia Southern Athletics, and we start with the trip out to Fayetteville. The trip in and of itself was an absolute blast. I don't know about you, but I had a lot of fun in Fayetteville. I know we went to Herman's Rib House. Chuck Barrett was on last week, the voice of the Arkansas Razorbacks, and said that that was one place that we had to make sure that we went. He was not wrong, because we got there and there was a lot of meat and a lot of meat consumed. And I think I've said this before, like when we went to Dreamland out in Tuscaloosa, they just bring you a loaf of white bread and some barbecue sauce. That's pretty good. Well, saltine crackers and barbecue sauce didn't disappoint either.
Well, the fact that, we had a chance to be on the deck for a little while. We had to wait for our table. We had a chance to meet some of the Razorback fans. Phenomenal people out there. Yeah. Some of the nicest people. They knew all about us. They had read up about us, asking about, your quarterback's coming back. What can we expect because he hasn't played yet this year? But as soon as we sat down, it couldn't have been much more than 60 seconds after. Whether this was just a coincidence or this was planned, they played the Arkansas fight song. They did the hog call, and that made us feel right at home.
Yeah, when an entire play, and it's not necessarily a large establishment, but there was enough people in there. I mean, it was slam packed. We had to wait for about an hour to get a table, but It was well worth it. And when the owner comes over and says, "Oh, y'all are with Georgia Southern? Hang on a second." They play the fight song. Frank got up and videoed it. I think you can check it out on his Twitter. Scroll back a little bit, but it was it was interesting. I think Frank said it best. We're not in Kansas anymore.
I'm getting to have dinner with former Eagle Huey Hunt.
Yeah.
He's currently practicing as an attorney in Baltimore. His wife and friend were also in town for the game. Getting a chance to dine with them, learn more about him, talk about some of those early 90s Eagle teams under Tim Stowers. It's all about the experience, and we probably say that in so many ways whenever we travel for football, but feeling that it was a glimpse of how they operate. It was a glimpse of how they get to eat all the time.
Well, it's a good thing we don't get to eat like that all the time.
I mean, the ribs were good. The prime rib was out of this world, and the town itself, it felt a little bit different than a college town. It almost felt like a mountain getaway because in a way you're not really in the Ozarks, but you're right around the same area, so you could feel the cooler air. Now, I know it was close to 90 once we got to the game on Saturday, but it was a great experience. I would absolutely go out there again. I thought our booth, the height was great. I thought the stadium, the setup, they had just renovated a couple of years ago. They did a really good job with everything.
No, and talking about the people was something that I really wanted to hit on this week's edition of Inside Eagle Nation, because you talked about it while we were out on the porch. There was probably, 8 or 10 different people that came up to us and started talking to us about Georgia Southern. They knew everything about what Georgia Southern was. They knew Tomlin was coming back.
Yeah.
Like, didn't he start a couple? Yeah, you're right.
And everybody wanted to come to Savannah at some point.
Right, exactly.
Savannah is one of my favorite cities. I've always wanted to go to Savannah. I've always wanted to go to Charleston. I know they kind of butt heads because, they kind of do the same thing. Like, well, yeah, anytime you're near Savannah, just come on up about 45 minutes. We're right here.
And it was something that I was kind of interested in and talked with Chuck about on Saturday. I was like, is this what they're always like? And I know the last couple of years haven't been all that great for Arkansas. Now everybody's super excited about Razorback football. They're number 20 in the country. They may have jumped ever since the new polls came out earlier today. I hadn't checked.
Yeah, they got up to 16th today.
Yeah, well worth it.
Yeah.
And he was like, no, this is what they are, whether the team is 0-12 or 12-0. And that's absolutely amazing. I mean, we got to see it last week. The interview we did with Chuck Barrett for Inside Eagle Nation last week, put it up on YouTube, had almost 5,000 views and 40 comments. All of them were Razorback fans talking about how they loved Chuck and what we needed to do, what we needed to see, all this different stuff. But that is what college football is all about, being able to support your program to the point where you know about opponents, and you take care of everybody coming in. Now, I'm sure when Texas comes in, they're not quite as hospitable because we heard a lot of horns down this weekend. I can tell you that much.
Yeah, we did.
But that's something to take note of, the way that, and not just the fans, everybody that we dealt with from the actual University of Arkansas was absolutely fantastic. Kyle got to catch up with our old buddy Mike Kaywood, who was at Coastal for a lot of years and made the transition out there. What'd you say, 4 years ago
4
now?
4 years ago already.
It's hard to believe he's been out there that long.
And from their standpoint, they look at Georgia Southern as not necessarily fresh meat. Well, yeah, on Saturday, I guess it was. But they looked at Georgia Southern's fans as brand new to Fayetteville.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll get a chance to go there for a couple of other sports. But outside of going to Little Rock and then Jonesboro for Arkansas State in league play, we don't journey over to the Ozarks, to the Boston Mountains like we did on Saturday. So if that's the only time we ever get to go out there, made some friends, ate extremely well. We saw just how nice it is out there. You got the Northwest Arkansas Naturals AA. They had just finished up the minor league season over the weekend, and my buddy Andrew Buckbinder, who's the great voice of the Springfield Cardinals, he was actually in town, and I didn't even realize it until after we landed in Savannah after the game. But it was a really neat area. The hotel was really well done. I would go back for sure. Of course, you want
100%.
a different result on the field, but I really liked how they had everything set up and a lot of really, really good people working for that athletic department.
No doubt about it. And we
got two of them now, Jared Benko and Haley Pruitt, both.
Yeah, we're 2 for 2 on those.
So we were able to suck them away from Fayetteville to get them to Statesboro. But if that's any indication of kind of the people they produce, take Arkansas people all day.
Absolutely. Taking a look around other action in Georgia Southern athletics before we dive into Georgia Southern football and the tail end of this week's edition of Inside Eagle Nation. Georgia Southern men's golf coming off a bye week. They will head out next Monday and Tuesday to the JT Poston Invitational up in Sapphire Valley, North Carolina. That one hosted by Western Carolina, and it's an event that Georgia Southern has seen success in the past, have played in it the last couple of years as well. Georgia Southern women's golf also had an off week. They will head to Greenville on Friday and Saturday to compete in the Lady Paladin Invitational, that one being hosted by Furman at the Furman University Golf Club. Georgia Southern volleyball improved to 7-3 on the year this weekend as they hosted their final non-conference tournament and swept the GATA Challenge. Got the 3-1 victory over Alabama State to start it off on Friday morning, then Friday evening with a 3-0 sweep over Mercer. Finish it off with a 3-0 sweep over USC Upstate on Saturday afternoon, and they will open up conference play this weekend as they will start in Louisiana. Friday at ULM at 7 p.m. first serve, and then 7 p.m. first serve as well on Saturday against the Ragin Cajuns not inside the Cajun Dome. They play in Long Gymnasium, don't they?
I'm not completely sure about that. I don't want to say the wrong thing.
I think they do. I'm
But
almost sure.
But
they'll be in Acadia.
Well, we're swapping volleyball for football to start league play, so you get what you get.
Yeah. I was looking at it earlier, and I was like, oh, Louisiana. We catch both. And I was like, wait a minute. No, we're not going down there. We're staying here.
We went down there last year.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, we did. Georgia Southern women's soccer began Sun Belt Conference play. Was supposed to be on Thursday, right before Hail Southern Live, because of rain and flooding on the field. Got moved to Friday afternoon with a 4-1 victory over App State. Taylor Regensberger and Alejandra Gracia picked up first half goals, and then followed up by 2 goals in the second half by Ellis Nimsov. Marcela Montoya had assists on both of those. Smith Cathy also assisted on the second en route to a 4-1 victory over the Mountaineers. Then they moved on to take on an Ole Miss team that was receiving votes in the top 25. Georgia Southern held tough after getting down 2-0, and then Nimsov again would get a goal, her third of the week, to cut it to 2-1, and that would be your final score against the Rebels. But a really good showing for Georgia Southern women's soccer against a team that's receiving votes. They will step back into Sun Belt play this week as they head to Arkansas, at Arkansas State on Thursday, a 4 p.m. kickoff, and then at Little Rock on Sunday, 2 p.m. And I think something that Coach Adams talked about on social media earlier this week, it's kind of a good barometer to see where this team is and where this team has gone. You remember Georgia Southern women's soccer went to Ole Miss in the spring as part of one of those 3 spring matches that they had. And you can definitely tell the improvement under Coach Adams the last 5-6 months, just from the spring until now, and you definitely see the improvement.
He talked about that game with me during, it was either both or one of the Sun Belt celebrations when women's tennis or men's golf was making their way back after a league title during the spring. But he mentioned that match against Ole Miss showed him, okay, I've got to find a way to get some height. I've got to find a way to get some bigger girls to be able to work the midfield and be able to give us more pressure once we get towards the box. Dropping that match 3-0, there was no shame in doing that, but being able to go there again, only fall 2-1, be in position to tie the game late, and now all those experiences have prepared them for the start of Sun Belt Conference play, and he's going to try to exceed the preseason rankings, which I have no doubt that he's going to do.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you talk about bringing in new players that he has. Nimsov, the transfer from Memphis, is the one that scored the goal against Ole Miss.
That was one he specifically mentioned to me. That one I remember we were at Statesboro Airport waiting for men's golf to come back from Arkansas, and he was really excited about. All he would say is the Memphis transfer. Couldn't say her by name, but say, I'm really excited about this Memphis transfer I got coming in.
Again, they will be in Arkansas to start Sun Belt Conference play this weekend on Thursday and on Sunday. Georgia Southern men's golf had a tough week against a couple of really good opponents. Began play on Tuesday up in Clemson to take on the number 2 Tigers. Ended up falling 5-0. They continued the week in the Carolinas with a trip up to Bowie's Creek to face off against Campbell, who was receiving votes in the top 25. They fell 4-1 in that matchup with the Camels, but they will get back to work and look ahead to a Wednesday matchup over at Eagle Field and Newark Park when they welcome in the College of Charleston Cougars to Statesboro for a 7 p.m. kickoff over at Eagle Field.
That's a little bit different for men's soccer. They're not only looking to get themselves on track, but this is their official foray into the MAC. So that's a different set of circumstances, a different set of teams to prepare for. You're not worried about Sunbelt play anymore. You're going to get a lot of teams coming to you. You're going to go to a lot of places this program hasn't been before. So if you can find a way to tap into that potential, it's going to serve them extremely well to make their debut in the MAC.
And we've talked about the really tough schedule that men's soccer has had.
That's why you do it.
Yeah.
That's exactly why you
number
do it.
18, Charlotte. Number 6, North Carolina. Number 2, Clemson. Campbell, again, that was receiving votes. And you start MAC play in a couple of weeks at number 7, Akron. At Bowling Green, that's receiving votes. Later in the year, you've got West Virginia coming to Statesboro, who's number 4 in the country right now. So you've got a tall task on your schedule still coming up.
He's going to earn it.
No doubt about it. But other action in Georgia Southern athletics. One more team in action as cross country ran on this year's NCAA championship course when they were down in Tallahassee at Florida State in the FSU Open.
That's neat.
The Eagles finished 25th out of 29, but all 6 Eagles were competing in their first collegiate 6K. And talking with Coach Carter afterwards, he said that was a really big learning experience for this team. And a lot of people don't realize there's a big difference between just running and running in a collegiate 6K. It's not not quite the same, especially when you're running on the NCAA championship course.
No, I can't imagine we'd be able to relate to that one at all.
No, I know I can't. Forget that noise. But they will be off for a week before the A6 Invitational in Fairburn at the beginning of October. But diving into last week for Georgia Southern football, taking on the number 20 team in the country. Again, Danny brought it up, and number 16 now in the top 25. But the Arkansas Razorbacks fell 45-10 to Arkansas. And it was a game that right out of the gate, Georgia Southern getting down 14-0 with 3 minutes to go in the first quarter. And you felt like Arkansas had all the momentum. You had a couple of big plays by the Razorbacks down the field. KJ Jefferson was everything that he was tabbed to be, and even more so a little bit. Their offensive line was as massive as they thought. I think Russ called them a whole mass of humanity. But you felt like Arkansas had all the momentum from the word go until about 7.5 minutes to go in the second quarter, where Arkansas brings both linebackers in on a blitz. Justin Tomlin reads it well, and it's 76 yards to the house. And at that point, Georgia Southern had gotten a couple of defensive stops, and you felt like there was a little bit of momentum swinging the way for Georgia Southern as much as it could in a 21-7 ball game.
It was so nice to watch Justin Tomlin just run.
Yeah.
Because he is a high school track standout. He was on the 4x1 at Southwest DeKalb, and to watch him turn the corner and run away from an SEC secondary, he got some help from Derwin Burgess, got that block on Ladarius Bishop to free him up about the last 30 or 40 yards, and then the safety, Joe Fouché, couldn't flag him down. At that point, okay, that was awesome. That was a moment Justin Tomlin's always going to have. That's a moment that Eagle Nation's always going to remember, and then Georgia Southern got the stop. But like has been the case for really the first 3 weeks of the season, the light bulb just isn't staying screwed in. It's just flickering way too much. Now, you've had some individual standout performances, I thought, on defense. Seth Robertson played really well, getting a lot of chance to play with Derek Canteen out for the season. I thought Randy Wade had his best game in a while. And the two true freshman inside linebackers, Mike Edwards and Eldrick Robinson, both had 5 tackles and a tackle for loss. I think they've earned themselves a lot more playing time now that league play is going to start this weekend. But it's just way too much of trying to get to that point instead of having the unfortunate situations be the outlier. The successes are being the outlier, and that's why Georgia Southern is trying to play catch-up.
And it turned into a 24-10 lead at the half for Arkansas after Georgia Southern and Arkansas exchanged field goals toward the end. It looked like Arkansas had scored a touchdown. A flag brought it back, and then Cam Little ended up kicking the field goal rather. Rayner has a field goal of 32 yards to make it to the 24-10 at the half. And at that point, you felt like you were at a tipping point. And it's weird to say at halftime you're at a tipping point. But how Georgia Southern came out in the second half was going to determine the way that game was going to go. We end up knowing which way it went, as Arkansas scored all 3 of the second half touchdowns. But it really felt like if Georgia Southern came out in the second half and threw a haymaker, you wondered what the difference would be in that game.
Well, they had a 3rd and 5 on that first drive. Arkansas gets the first down up to, it's a foreshadowing. They get the first down up to the 40. Very next play, 60-yard touchdown pass to Thompson. Anthony Beck punts on Georgia Southern's next possession. By the way, he was really good. I hate that we saw him as much as we did, but he tied a school record with 4 punts of 50-plus. The school record he set against Liberty in the Cure Bowl back in 2019. 4 inside the 20. 3 of those were inside the 10, including that first one of the third quarter. But the first play of that drive, 91-yard touchdown pass to Traylon Burks. And look, I know he's an All-American, but Georgia Southern missed 2 tackles. They could have held him to about 10 or 15 yards. He showed his form. It's unfortunate that that's probably where the game ended, and there was still 11 and a half to play in the third. And maybe the most disheartening part of the beginning of this season is that Georgia Southern has not scored a third quarter point. Yeah. That's an area where typically the Eagles have come out of the locker room well. It's been years and years where they have been a consistently strong third quarter team. Yards per carry has been very good in the third. They seem to have a defense worn down to a point where they can pop one of those long runs. I think about I know Shy Wertz is gone, but I think about so many of his runs. Logan Wright, J.D. King, hopefully he's back this week. Coach said he did look good in practice last night, so maybe this is when he makes his season debut against the Cajuns. But so far, it just has not worked out. They haven't scored a third quarter point. I think it's 41-0 in the third and 68-10 through the first 3 games in the second half. And that's not going to win a whole lot of games when that's the case.
No.
And when you're only scoring 16 points total over a 2-game stretch, defensively you've got to be even better than what you were last year when that defense was historically good, maybe as good as the 2010 unit, elements of maybe the late 90s, maybe the 88 defense. It could have rivaled one of the top 5 defenses in school history, but now you're looking at a unit that you can stack up the amount of guys that have been lost. Raymond Johnson's gone. Rashad Byrd, Raynard Ellis, Kendrick Duncan, all gone off the team. Marquez Watson-Trent, Todd Bradley-Glenn, Derek Canteen are all out for the year due to injury. So that's 7 guys that maybe would have started.
Yeah.
For those that would have exercised the extra year, didn't transfer out for a number of reasons. So you're going to see a lot of younger guys play. And you can say next man up all you want to, and in theory, eventually I think you'll get to that point. But you're seeing that Georgia Southern just doesn't have a whole lot of experience depth. You can plug guys in, but until they get enough experience where they can get comfortable, there are going to be some growing pains with as many young guys as are going to have to play.
And that's the big thing that you really saw against Arkansas. And, yeah, I know when you get towards the tail end of one of those games, you're going to see a lot of different guys anyway, but you saw Anthony Wilson leave. You saw Amari Jones at the end of the first quarter be carted off to the locker room. Coach Lunsford talked about it earlier today in his press conference that the x-rays came back negative. Hopefully we'll have him back against Louisiana this weekend. But it just seemed like every other play, and it was something that we had talked with Coach Lunsford and both coordinators, Doug Roos and Scott Sloan, that you were hoping that that's not what it was, that every other play somebody was being taken off the field. It wasn't every other play, but at certain points in the game, it seemed like it was every other play. You saw Anthony Wilson go down again. Had a number of different guys that had to step up that hadn't really done it. But one guy that I wanted to touch on, Naji Thompson, comes in and playing cornerback. He had only been on the defensive side of the practice field for about a week and a half at that point, converting from wideout to cornerback, and we talked about it a little bit during the game, you and Terry did, about how he came in as a DB and then was transitioned to wideout. But for somebody that hasn't played cornerback in a couple years, he didn't look too shabby.
Got a decent number of reps in the fourth quarter. Of course, he backed up his special teams exploits. He downed 2 of those Anthony Beck punts that were inside of the 10. He had the 1 inside of the 1, and those two just have such a great relationship. We saw it today on social media. It's actually a truer friendship just because they work together so much, even though, ironically, they get separated by 40 or 50 yards. Whenever one has to make the play, the other has to make the back end of the play. I liked what I saw from him at corner. I think he's earned himself some more reps there when it's not a 3 or 4 score game. And in this situation, Tyler Bry was somebody that went out late after he collided with Zion McGee. You mentioned Wilson. Left tackle Brian Miller left after the second quarter. Griffin Carter saw a lot of snaps, his most extensive action on the offensive line during his career. It got to a point where it felt like there were more guys hurt than there were healthy. And because of that, at times it looked like Arkansas was playing against a scout team. And I don't mean that to sound like they're playing a high school squad, but the only other quarterback I can remember looking that calm against Georgia Southern was Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah.
KJ Jefferson, there were times where it looked like he could have closed his eyes, had a nice little siesta, and still found somebody. He was so settled and so calm because Georgia Southern just couldn't find a way to consistently pressure him. They got some hits on him, but it just wasn't consistent, back to the theme we mentioned initially.
Yeah, Russ Brown definitely earned his paycheck on the sidelines this weekend. Not only was it a little toasty, he was having to go and check that medical tent a good bit.
Man, Russ, go get him.
Not again.
I mean, Mari rides off on the front of the cart. We find out, you mentioned about the x-rays being negative on that left ankle. He would be someone to just have in some capacity for the weekend against Louisiana. But if you want to dive into it a little bit more deeply, all of Georgia Southern's primary ball carriers have been hurt at some point this year. I mean, Jalen White banged up, but not injured. I should have put that a different way. Outside of Jalen White, everybody's been injured. Everybody that carries the ball for Georgia Southern has been injured at some point since the beginning of fall camp. That's a lot to overcome.
It was a 45-10 victory for the Arkansas Razorbacks over Georgia Southern. But again, reset Sunday. We have to make... Whoa.
You reset the microphone.
Yeah. Flip it around. We have to make it reset Monday because we don't have a Sunday show. That's how that is. But 45-10 the victory for Arkansas. Georgia Southern looks ahead to the Louisiana Ragin Cajuns on Hall of Fame weekend. Also Teacher Appreciation weekend in Statesboro. 6 o'clock kickoff between Georgia Southern and the Ragin Cajuns. We'll be on the air with the Cutwater Tailgate Show beginning at 4 o'clock from the back of the tailgate lot. And when you look at this Louisiana team coming off a victory last Thursday against Ohio, 49-14, that was a game that, and Craig Melanson and I talked about it on their We're Talking podcast earlier on today, that seemed like a game that Louisiana needed after a tough loss to Texas, at Texas, who was numbered 19 in the country at the time, 38-13, then just squeaking by Nichols 27-24 in week 2. It seemed like they needed that dominant victory over Ohio to kind of get themselves back. Okay, this is what Cajun football is.
It was the that's more like it game. And to be honest, that's what Georgia Southern needs on Saturday. And I hate the phrase must win because every game's must win. You don't go into a week saying, okay, we don't need this one like we needed last one. This one's not
this one's okay.
No, I hate that phrase. Every game is a must win, but Georgia Southern is in dire need of a that's more like it game.
Yeah.
On the flip side, for the Cajuns, had a chance to watch that entire game on Thursday. Ohio is a little bit down, but the Cajuns did what they do best, smash-mouth running game, efficient passing game, and a turnover-forcing defense. They forced 7 giveaways already those first 3 games, but offensively, they've back to their 3-headed monster at running back. You take away Mitchell, you take away Regis, who are now in the NFL, but it's Smith, it's Bailey, it's the freshman Montrell Johnson, who
I'm a big fan of.
Had 4 touchdowns. True freshman. Nobody had ever done that in Cajun history, but he runs for 84 yards and 4 scores. The quarterback, though, Levi Lewis, Terry loves him, and it's for good reason. Maybe Georgia Southern could find a way to sack him because they haven't sacked him the last 2 years, but he opted to come back for his 6th year. He was 21 of 29, and according to Jay, when he was talking with Craig, of those 8 incompletions, 3 of those were drops. So, just typical Levi Lewis. He finds a way to put the ball in the money. He's not a running quarterback, but if you push him to it, he will run, as Georgia Southern saw a couple of times during the 2020 game. It's just a tough offense to stop because you know what they're going to do. A lot like Georgia Southern, you can know what they're going to do, but with that experienced offensive line and the experience at quarterback, they're just such a tough unit to stop.
Just to give you an idea of what Levi Lewis has meant, and I know everybody has seen Levi Lewis a lot more than they would want to for the senior out of Baton Rouge, expecting to make his 32nd start of his career for Louisiana, but he's 3rd in Louisiana history with over 7,000 passing yards, just 2 spots behind Jake Delhomme. He's 2nd in Louisiana history with 58 passing touchdowns in his career, just behind Jake Delhomme, which he's probably going to catch him at some point with that one.
He's going to pass him. He's also thrown a touchdown in 21 straight games. And for a team that is known for running the ball as much as they do, throw for a touchdown in 21 straight. So he's able to have that contribution there as well.
But he is somebody that is so smart with the football. And there's guys that can make up for not necessarily being the highest football IQ guy just with their legs. But he is somebody that is kind of the opposite. He is so smart, he can make up for not being necessarily the fastest guy on the field.
He just doesn't put the ball in difficult situations that much. Now, he is going to throw a pick every now and then, even though he's only thrown 15 over the course of 5 years, which is just... That's how much he values the football. Georgia Southern got him once last year. They went Tampa 2, going deep, and Raynard Ellis picked him off. But... He almost looks like he toys with people because he knows how much he can run, but he's not going to unless he really has to. He's not that option, that dual threat guy. Yeah. But if he needs to run, he can show you, I've got wheels. This makes you think a little bit. I'm not going to do it much, but just know that it's there. When he's dropping back, he's looking to throw. And one thing that really punches you in the face when you read about the Cajuns' offense so far, he has hit 17 different receivers in 3 games. 17!
And a big part of that, they love to use those tight ends as receivers as well. You've got 3 different guys that's a tight end that has caught a pass this year.
Yeah.
And this is an offense, and we'll talk about it a lot more when we flip over to the defensive side, because outside of the offensive line, yes, there's experience, but not as much as on the defensive side. But there's just so much experience and experience together. And there's a big difference between that, and we talk about that a little bit time and time again, but having so many different guys that have played so many snaps together under Coach Napier, who everybody didn't really think he would still be the coach of Louisiana at this point.
After the last 2 years.
5-6 years ago.
Yeah.
And he's somebody that has really built this program into what it is, and it's making it one of those that, especially with all the crazy conference realignment crap that's going on, it's making it one of the top teams in the Sun Belt and one of the top teams in the Group of 5.
It was endearing the way he put it, why he didn't go to Auburn, why he didn't go to Baylor, Mississippi State, South Carolina, any of the major openings of the last 2 seasons, because he said there was still work to do here.
Yeah.
Somebody that you could probably pay $10 and he would just want to be a football coach. That's how much he loves ball. Dad was a coach, passed away a couple of years ago after a courageous battle with ALS. He's a North Georgia boy, Chatsworth and Murray County, where his dad coached for such a long time. Head coach, OC. He's got option in his blood. Not that the offense they run is necessarily an option. They're more of the App State ilk, where they're going to try to run the wide zone or the stretch play to work it off tackle. It all works because of the experience they have on that offensive line, and that's not having left tackle Carlos Rubio for the first 2 games of the season. Now, he did return against Ohio, but Ken Marks, who's a 7th-year senior, one of the rare 7th-year guys. There is an 8th-year guy that plays at East Tennessee State. We don't have to worry about them, though. But Shane Vallow's a former walk-on now in his 3rd year as a starter. That right side of the offensive line, it's the best right side of an offensive line in the league. And I don't mind.
Close.
I don't mind putting it that way because I think it's true. Osiris Torrance, a freshman All-American 2 years ago. He started every game since. Max Mitchell has played both tackle positions. He is outstanding on the right side. And this was an offensive line that just a couple of years ago had 2 NFL guys on it.
Yeah.
At the same time, in the Sun Belt, Dotson and Hunt at the same time on that side of the line, and now they're thriving in the professional ranks.
And you're seeing them rebuild it almost with those guys still there, and it's a lot like you saw with Hunt and the guys before them.
Yeah.
Osiris Torrance has been there. He started since he was a freshman, but he was somebody that had to kind of wait his turn a little bit. Max Mitchell, a guy that kind of had to wait his turn a little bit. Ken Marks had to wait his turn a little bit, and I mean that was about a decade ago. But there's not a whole lot of experience on the second level of that offensive line.
No,
but it's because that's the next wave that's going to be in the next 2-3 years. That's going to be the wave that we talk about. Man, these guys have been here forever.
And gift and the curse of having the COVID waiver year is that you get so much back. The guys behind them were probably thinking, I'm going to get in earlier if that waiver year didn't exist. But now they got last year, they're getting this year, so that you may have to burn a year of eligibility this year. But you got a full season's worth of reps where it didn't count against you. So when all these guys wave bye-bye after this year, slide them in, slot them into those positions, and I would guess that the Cajuns are still going to be in good shape. That's whether or not Billy Napier is still the head coach by the time 22 gets here.
One other thing I want to touch on for the offense, and we touched on it a little bit, but the 3-headed monster at running back, it seems like they've got those for the last 7 years. They've had a 3-headed monster, and it's been about 17 different guys.
Just how they roll.
But Chris Smith is, quote-unquote, the number 1 guy now. You've heard about him a lot as a returner, now getting to see what he does as a back for Louisiana. Imani Bailey at the 2, and then Montrell Johnson that we talked about a little bit, had those 4 scores against Ohio. He is a load at running back and listed at just 5'11", 210. I say just.
Yeah.
5'11", 210, but he is somebody that runs so hard, and he absolutely ran over an Ohio Bobcat there in the second half.
He reminds me a lot of Elijah Mitchell. I think that he doesn't have the speed that Mitchell does, and that's why Mitchell was starting for the 49ers last week before he got hurt. But I believe that if he sticks it out, he could be one of the tops that have ever gone to Louisiana. I know Tyrell Fenroy, that was before Georgia Southern's time, but he is at the top of a lot of their rushing totals in school history. But for Johnson, in just his 3rd career game, to have a 4-touchdown contest, you want to talk about a guy who can build some early momentum and confidence. and he did it on national television.
Yeah.
He was the one that reached barely over the goal line at the end of the first half, and I believe at that point that's where that game was put away. They could have kicked a field goal because Kenny Almendares has been really good since taking over for Nate Snyder. But to run that final play and to watch him battle for the goal line, they said he got in, whether he did or not. They said he got in. They couldn't overturn it, so he did. It was 21-7 at the half. They dominated the final 30 minutes, and that gave them that trampoline into the third and fourth quarters because of what he was able to do when given an opportunity.
When you flip it over to the defensive side, it's something we've talked about a little bit already, but there is so much experience on this defense for Louisiana. When you this is a team, it almost feels like an NFL team because you're like, okay, it's the same cast of characters on the defense for these guys.
Yeah.
To the point where their starters that they list on the 2 deep, there's only one that has less than 20 games started, and that's A.J. Riley at linebacker.
What makes this not as familiar to me is that a year ago when these two teams matched up, they had 7 defensive starters out because of COVID that game. But Taylon Humphrey's been there for a while. Chris Moncrief has been there for a while. Chauncey Manac has been there for a while. Their whole secondary is back. So guys that we have heard of, but it was a year ago when they were dealing with some early season COVID issues. Georgia Southern went to Cajun Field, outplayed them, outgained them, but Nate Snyder kicks the 53-yard field goal. They walk it off with a 2-point win. It's a really good unit. They have been against the pass. Even though it seems like they're more built to stop the run, they were really good against the pass. They've struggled against the pass so far. They're 97th in the country, giving up 254 per game. Taylon Humphrey, though, in the middle. Big Sauce. When your nickname's Big Sauce, you probably do some things. And he would have done really well in Arkansas this weekend with all the Hermans we ate. But at 350 pounds, he's an NFL prospect and somebody that I highly anticipate is going to be playing on Sundays.
Yeah, he's, as Terry would say, he's a big kid. He is absolutely huge. But it's the same, and I know I keep saying it, but it's the same guys that we've talked about for what seems like 20 years. You've got Chauncey Manac, who I've pointed at his name forever, Chris Moncrief, Lorenzo McCaskill, Taylon Humphreys, Percy Butler, Braylon Trahan. It's so many guys that you see time and time again, but on the flip side, you know that they've seen Georgia Southern that many times and have seen what this offense does.
You would think that the familiarity can both hurt and help, but one thing that does give the Cajuns a little bit of an edge that very few to ever come this way would possess, they've never lost a game at Paulson.
That's true. The only Georgia Southern win against the Cajuns was at Louisiana.
In 2017, when a freshman by the name of Levi Lewis got the start, played the first 3 series, looked like a freshman, he was yanked. Georgia Southern dominated that game, and it's the game that got Chad Lunsford the head coaching job.
True. I wish they would have kept Levi Lewis yanked.
But in 16, it was a Thursday night game. They came to Paulson for the first time ever. They dominated that game. Georgia Southern got a couple of late scores, but Cajuns were largely in control of that game. And then 2 years ago, the Eagles had just gotten back from Minnesota and thought they can go up there and beat a Big Ten team who would ultimately win 11 games that year. Let's see what the Eagles can do against the Cajuns. They got the ball first, went down the field in about 15 seconds and scored a touchdown. And they're good.
Yeah.
And that was one of the few times that a Georgia Southern team was physically manhandled up front. How big and strong their running backs looked. They only punted once that game. And even though the Eagles stayed close with some Tyler Bass field goals, the Cajuns kept scoring touchdowns, and that's why they won that game by 2 scores.
This will be one that I think a lot of people around the conference are going to be watching just from the sheer fact of trying to figure out, is this Louisiana team what everybody thought at the beginning of the season when they were in the top 25 in the preseason? Or is it a team that is like they looked against McNeese against Nichols and Texas, where it was kind of up in the air? Is Louisiana still the same Louisiana? They tried to prove that against Ohio, but like you talked about, Ohio a little bit down this year. This will be the first time that Louisiana actually gets a quote-unquote like opponent test. And I think there's going to be a lot of people around the conference and really around the country that take notice of Louisiana to see what this Cajuns team is all about.
This is one where Georgia Southern could still have its launching point. We looked at that FAU game as being a pivotal game for how it would begin a very difficult stretch of football, but this is where it's going to matter.
Yeah.
Whether it's a West team, which you've got Arkansas State the next week, so you don't get an East team until you go to Troy 3 weeks from now. But these are the games that it gets turned up to 11, to steal a really horrible pun from Spinal Tap. But these are ones where, and it's must-win is not something that you want to highlight, but it's where this week a that's more like it performance. Running the football, getting to third and short, not giving up the big pass play, sustaining drives, finishing drives.
Yeah, because, I mean, you look at it, and yes, the first 3 games haven't gone the way you want to if you're Georgia Southern at 1-2, and even the Gardner-Webb game wasn't exactly what you wanted, but everything is still on the table. You're still 0-0 in Sun Belt Conference play. You can still win the conference tournament. You can still go to a bowl game. You can still do everything that you had set out to do this year, despite what the first 3 games have looked like. If you turn it on here at Louisiana, and I know it's not, oh, you flip the switch and, oh, it's on, ready to go, but if you turn the corner and it starts here against Louisiana, there's nothing to say that this can't still be a special year for Georgia Southern.
No, because then it would be okay, you get this one, then you can look at, well, Arkansas State just got pounded by Washington 52-3. I know that they're throwing for almost a little bit. They're throwing for almost 400 yards a game with 2 quarterbacks, but defensively, not stopping anybody. And then a Troy team that, while defensively they've looked really good so far, outside of Liberty, haven't really played anybody. South Alabama, the week after on a Thursday, they're 3-0, haven't really played anybody, and they were trailing at the half to a SWAC team in Alcorn State last weekend, having to deal with the lights going out, but they did come back on long enough to get the rest of the game played, and they got that 3-0 start.
Delayed by about an hour and a half?
Yeah, there was a thought that they may not be able to finish the game because they couldn't figure out how to get the lights back on.
Good night. No pun intended.
It is that was really good. You can really adjust your train of thought just by how this weekend is going to look. And you mentioned Hall of Fame weekend. We're going to enshrine 6 people, getting a chance to have the banquet in person. You didn't get to do that last year because of COVID. It's also Teacher Appreciation Weekend. And the Eagles haven't been home in 3 weeks. And I said this in postgame with Terry right before the Ford locker room wrap-up. I know that 83-16 over the last 2 weeks doesn't cut it. I know it was probably frustrating to deal with, and it was, from our standpoint, it was frustrating to talk about because you see how hard they work, and then you see it not translate to the contest. But if they run out of that inflatable from the FOC Saturday night and see that place packed and see that you're still on their side and that you haven't given up just because it's been a couple of bad performances and it's a 1-2 start, if you're there, remember how bad Paulson is for everybody else, even though the Cajuns are 2-0? Remember how difficult it is to come here and play? The reason why Georgia Southern's got the second best winning percentage at Paulson all time, it's because of Eagle Nation. If they show up, Georgia Southern will do its best to show out. Whether they do it or not, that's why we're going to be there to see it, because this is our program, and this is one we want to see succeed.
And it goes back to what we were talking about, kind of take the episode full circle of what we were talking about with Arkansas earlier. Whether they were 0-12, and they weren't 0-12, but they're pretty darn close to it a couple years.
Awful couple of years for them.
But like Chuck Barrett talked about, that's a program that you still had people at the games. You still had people looking up what the opponent was, what the opponent did, trying to know everything they can to support that program. And it doesn't matter what the record is, what it looks like, you're still there to support them because they're, in that case, the Razorbacks, in our case, Georgia Southern. I'm really going to knock this thing out before this is over with. I'm 2 for 2 on this right now.
And now look where they are, 3-0, 16th in the country, and their game in Arlington against Texas A&M is the CBS National Game of the Week this week. So they've gone from a 20-game SEC losing streak to being the National Game of the Week when Alabama's still there, LSU's still there, A&M, which they're going to play. That's a rivalry matchup. It's been in Arlington for a number of years. So they have been able to ascend to a point where they felt that they never should have left. Sam Pittman has got them in the right direction, and all it's going to take is one performance for Georgia Southern to get right back where they feel they should be.
Again, everything's still on the table for Georgia Southern this weekend. It's Georgia Southern and Louisiana. 6 o'clock kickoff for the Ragin Cajuns and the Eagles at Allen E. Paulson Stadium. We'll be on the air at 4 o'clock with the Cutwater Tailgate Show in the back of the tailgate lot. Again, got the Hall of Fame induction ceremony that afternoon. That'll be streamed on Facebook Live, on gseagles.com, and on Georgia Southern Athletics YouTube channel, as well as Georgia Southern Sports Network YouTube channel as well. So check that out, and different announcements will be coming out in the next couple of days of when and where you can see that and get your tickets to come to Georgia Southern, Louisiana, and the Hall of Fame induction ceremony that afternoon. But 6 o'clock, the kickoff for Georgia Southern, Louisiana this Saturday. We'll have our next edition of Hail Southern Live coming up on Thursday from the Gene Bishop Fieldhouse. Make sure to come out and support head coach Chad Lunsford. Going to have an Eagle player in the second segment, member of the Georgia Southern Athletic Department as well, to start off the show. That from 7 to 8 p.m. at the Gene Bishop Fieldhouse. Refreshments in there as well. Got some good chicken in there the last couple of weeks. I'm still waiting for my crackers to come back. They said they were bringing them back.
You do know the boss.
I know.
But help facilitate that a little bit.
Yeah. I think he told him not to bring them just so I'd be a little ticked.
You surprised?
No.
Okay.
None whatsoever. But until this weekend, Georgia Southern and Louisiana. For the voice of the Eagles, Danny Reed, this is Colin Lacy saying so long, everybody.
You've been listening to Inside Eagle Nation, powered by Learfield, the official podcast of Georgia Southern Athletics.